In a world where whispers are buried beneath headlines, where the truth is drowned in silence, real voices, real crimes, we uncover the stories that were never meant to be told. This is Silence of the Truth.
That are all best friends.
Until Mike Williams vanished without a trace on a hunting trip in 2000.
On December 16th, 2000, exactly 1 month before his birthday, Jerry Mike Williams climbed into a duck boat alone at dawn. The wind was calm, the lake glassy. He radioed Denise from shore. "I'll be back, love." But by afternoon, he was gone.
It was around 72 degrees on Saturday when Mike went missing. And then a cold front had come through, and the next morning it was 12 degrees.
Divers combed the lake for days. Deer-like waders in Mike's hunting jacket washed ashore. Local officials believed Mike slipped into the current and drowned. The alligator theory gained traction. Locals whispered of reminders that living by South Georgia water can be dangerous. Cheryl Williams, Mike's mother, sensed something deeper, an absence that couldn't be swayed by rumors of submerged scavengers. Denise filed for a declaration of death, claiming a 5-figure life insurance payout. Meanwhile, a memorial service was planned, one that Cheryl never intended to attend. Over the following months, Cheryl visited law enforcement offices, demanded dive logs, mailed photos of Mike's desk, his dog tags, his children's toys. But investigators closed the case.
It's a murder case over 15 years in the making, a twisty tale set deep in the Florida Panhandle.
And Cheryl's view of the dock, once hopeful, became haunted. For 6 more agonizing weeks, law enforcement searched. Divers, sonar, canine units, local volunteers joined. Still no body. Then one morning, Mike's waders and jacket were reeled in from Swamp Edge, soaked in mucky silt, barely intact. Investigators called it pedestrian. Cheryl called it betrayal. She could not understand why a duck hunter would wade near a bank without assistance. A few months later, Denise quietly received $1.7 million in life insurance benefits. She listed Mike as presumed dead and reapplied for her mortgage alone. Realtors tell of visits to the waterfront property, yet no frantic business from police. Cheryl was left wondering, were they looking in the wrong place or ignoring what they found? In 2005, Denise married Brian Winchester, Mike's childhood friend and hunting partner. That wedding sparked whispers in the community. Kathleen Aldredge, a church friend of Denise's, was also skeptical. When Brian moved into Mike's house and took over his marriage, Kathy's conviction hardened into worry. Kathy, armed with old diaries, phone records, and funeral calendars, tracked Denise and Brian's timeline. She discovered visits Denise had claimed were for grief support, but phone logs showed pairings with drive times, spa visits, and late-night calls. She quietly shared her files with Cheryl, telling her something was orchestrated, not accidental. By 2010, Cheryl and Kathy had become relentless investigators. Cheryl attended open record sessions and town hall meetings, scrutinizing every response with care. Kathy began reviewing cell phone tower pings, credit card transactions, and cell phone inventories for Brian and Denise. One log showed Denise purchasing a life insurance policy mere weeks before Mike's disappearance. Another placed Brian at a hardware store the day before, purchasing a large plastic tarp and mesh traps. These were small clues, but they cracked the case open. They organized neighborhood interviews, asking awkward questions about who saw Brian that morning. A dock worker remembered seeing someone walk out mid-morning, not early dawn. Another neighbor had heard an argument in the early afternoon near the shoreline. Sorting through vague recollections and fragmented memories, they built a foundation for a warrant that would reopen the case. In August 2016, a violent incident turned the case around. Brian Winchester, enraged over Denise's threats to expose him, forced her into his vehicle at gunpoint. Denise managed to call 911. Pulled over by deputies, Brian found himself facing multiple charges: kidnapping, aggravated assault, weapons offenses. While held, facing decade behind bars, he made a decision: tell the truth. He provided a chillingly detailed statement, describing how Denise had urged him to kill Mike, the way he shot him in the head, and how they staged the disappearance. Investigators reopened the marsh after Brian's confession. In October, forensic diver teams uncovered a decomposed body buried beneath a layer of mud and leaves. Identification was quickly confirmed via DNA. Mike was never found alive. What remained was a tragic resolution to confusion that had haunted his mother for over a decade. The trial began in late 2018. The prosecution used Brian's videotaped confession as a centerpiece. Witnesses testified about insurance premiums doubling 3 months before Mike's disappearance. Denise had quickly removed Mike's name from their bank accounts. During testimony, Brian's tone was monotone and remorseful. His description of shooting Mike, point blank, after locking him in waiters, sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Members of Mike's family, his father, mother, and sister, sat in the front row. Cheryl held Mike's photo in her lap. Denise sat stoically, emotion carefully contained. 8 hours later, the jury returned with a guilty verdict on all counts. Defense lawyers attempted an appeal, arguing that Ronnie had misled her about Brian's criminal record. But the conviction stood. Denise received a mandatory life sentence, additional concurrent terms totaling 30 years for conspiracy and accessory, overruling years of silence. August 2016. A domestic dispute between Denise and Brian escalates. While driving, Denise fears for her life and calls 911. Responding sheriff deputies arrest Brian for kidnapping. Facing life behind bars, Brian makes a confession that unravels the entire case. In recorded interviews, Brian describes how Denise orchestrated Mike's murder. He admitted to shooting him in the head after forcing him into water-filled waders. The plan to ensure quick drowning failed. What followed was calculated panic. Mike's body was dragged into the swamp, weighted down, and concealed by branches. Brian's exact recollection, names, dates, physical evidence, helped investigators locate Mike's remains within months. Cheryl Williams, clutching a phone on an isolated roadside, heard the words she waited years to hear: "I led them to Mike." October 2017. Weeks of retrieval effort conclude when Mike's skeletal remains are discovered in a shallow trench draped in foliage. Forensic pathologists determine cause of death: a single close-contact gunshot wound to the skull. The waders and jacket found earlier aided in confirming identity through dental records. For Cheryl, the news was bittersweet. After years of unanswered questions, she finally had certainty, a name to point to. The same day, Denise was officially indicted for first-degree murder. Brian Winchester, having confessed, was charged with first-degree murder but later struck a deal: reduced accessory and kidnapping charges in exchange for his cooperation. In early 2018, prosecutors built their case using Brian's confession, insurance documents, cell tower pings, and witness testimony from neighbors and family. Denise's fast remarriage and immediate relocation raised eyebrows and fueled prosecutorial urgency. At community centers, Cheryl shared her story publicly for the first time, distributing flyers, hosting support groups for families struggling with missing loved ones. Kathy continued her behind-the-scenes role, coordinating timelines, preparing witness letters. Local attorneys told media her effort was beyond what law enforcement typically achieves. In late 2018, Denise Williams faced trial. Prosecutors presented an airtight case: Brian's detailed confession, insurance and banking records, neighbors' witness statements. The jury had little doubt Denise played a central role. In court, Denise remained composed. Tears never came. Only once, when Brian testified in painstaking detail, did her composure falter, and the silence in the courtroom spoke volumes. After 8 hours of deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts for first-degree murder, conspiracy, and accessory after the fact. Denise received a life sentence plus 30 years. But in 2020, the Florida Appellate Court overturned the murder conviction on a technicality, not for lack of evidence, but for wording in the charge. Her conspiracy sentence remained intact, meaning she still faces decade behind bars. As Denise was led away, Cheryl and Kathy remained. Front row, faces set. Cheryl began traveling across Florida, sharing her story at cold case conferences and speaking out about the flaws in how missing persons cases are handled. She emphasized the importance of civilian persistence and careful record keeping. Kathy turned her file binders into digital roadmaps, helping dozens of cold case families. Though Mike could never return, his story helped others avoid being lost in silence. July 30th, 2025. Hulu premiered Mr. and Mrs. Murder, a 3-part docuseries that introduced this case to millions. Interviews included Cheryl, Kathy detectives, and local insiders. New documents and security footage provided fresh context. Viewers responded with empathy and outrage in equal measure. Critics praised its restrained tone, especially its refusal to sensationalize, but many felt it rekindled unresolved emotion in the families. Mike Williams was only 31, a birth date still unmourned on many fronts. His life ended, but his story endured, a tapestry woven with betrayal, grief, investigation, and ultimately justice. Denise Williams lives in prison. Brian Winchester, a man who turned friend into foe, is serving decades as well. But the legacy belongs to the women who held fast to conviction. These chapters remind us, secrets sink deep, but truth learns afloat.